So we just quickly review what happened last week. Okay, so we just looked at the three blessings as an ideological framework. That's where the ideology of the movement belongs. Um, and basically, we somehow, if humans can channel these three norms, if I'm the best I can be, if I'm loving my wife and really protecting my children and nurturing them, and if I'm personally building a career where I can feed my family and care for nature at the same time, then there's absolutely no better way to build a flourishing democracy. It's the ideal. There's nothing you can do any better than this. We're acting as responsible people. God gave us all these gifts. We're being caring. We're sovereign citizens of a nation. So democracy, what is a democracy? They're very rare in history. But they only can be born when enough citizens have developed the ability to live a three blessings lifestyle, fundamentally. So rather than have a king or queen or oligarch ruling over them, people become sovereign citizens with a natural responsibility and capacity to act in ways that generate positive social energy. So basically, we only can see a democracy. Democracy came into being in the West as more and more people became competent to live a three blessings lifestyle and look after their own family. And when too many citizens will struggle to live up to this standard, our nations will revert to some form of authoritarianism, which is most of history humans have lived under. You know, so. Last week we talked about these three different the principles that surround the three blessings. From the section of give and take action through to the end, which is the three blessings, there are various principles mentioned, and we talked about how they support the three blessings. So there's the personal vision created by the three blessings lifestyle, which is if I strive to be fruitful, if I strive to nurture and protect, marry and protect, nurture and protect my children, and if I strive to feed my family and care for nature, then this gives me a personal idea of how I can live a good life. And the second thing is that it's a lifestyle which benefits me, which brings most likely to bring blessings to me and the wider society at one and the same time. So there's a joint individual purpose and a whole purpose. So if I'm trying to be fruitful and etc., the society benefits too. We can get situations where things only benefit me and not the wider society, or benefits the wider society but not me. But that's not the ideal. We need a lifestyle which benefits both. We talked about internally, each of these blessings has internal workings, which allows for the optimization of each of the three blessings. So if we're talking about becoming a fruitful person, you might talk about the ability to be forgiving or grateful or to have certain skills and knowledge. If we're talking about the second blessing, we might talk about staying away from premarital sex as a means to protect children. And the third one has, the freedom to earn money and to make a living. So each of them has internal working, which we looked at some of those. And if basically we said if any of those improve, if you improve the internal working of any of those, then the society will move forward and develop. And that's how the West developed over the last 400 years, by improving the quality of people to live this kind of lifestyle. It asks for citizens control their sex drive for the sake of the social good. And we talked about the fact that everything that's centered, each give and take action centered upon and it creates three kinds of energy: existence, action, and multiplication. Um, so each of these three forms of being fruitful, second blessing, and third blessing, generate, when done well, generate energy which allows for the continued existence of my community, the continuation of the good within my community, and the potential for future development within my community. So each of these three blessings allow for a society to continue grow. Okay? And if you take these blessings away, it's the opposite happens. We start to decay, and the foundation for development slows, and things like this. Okay, so that's what we talked about last week. And postmodernism, we were talking about progressivism last week. Mark Bramwell didn't like that, so I've moved to postmodernism. It comes in different names: cultural Marxism, justice warriors, woke. Basically, various groups working in our societies and nations, wish to undermine the three blessing foundation that actually built the West for the sake of gaining power and money. They make it basically over time, they make it increasingly harder for various groups of citizens to live a three blessings lifestyle. So it's harder and harder for people to get married. More and more people struggle to have a child. More and more people are homeless, etc., etc. And social decay is the end result of their activity. The source of postmodernism, it's as a series of intellectual ideas. It stems from the social science departments of universities. And the vast majority of professors are on the left of the political spectrum and study the ideas of Marx and Hegel intensely. But its roots are traced back to the USSR, who wished to undermine the three blessing foundation that built the democratic West. So during the Cold War, they wanted to undermine the West. So the Frankfurt School started in Germany, and then it moved to America, and from there it spread out. So basically, its roots are, how can we undermine the West? And it continues that strategy. Okay. According to some theorists, postmodernism spreads through society using the K-enable dynamic, as ever larger groups of citizens find it increasingly hard to embody the principles that allow for them to gain blessings or to live a three blessing lifestyle. They can grow envious and are willing to destroy the lives of those who can. I wouldn't say that applies to the core people pushing the laws which are connected with postmodernism. I would say that many of the supporters are people who are angry at life, but I think the core postmodernists are focusing on power and money. I think that's from my understanding. So we quickly looked at, because we reviewed these ideas last week, the things about the purpose of each of the blessings. The principles, because the principles that support the three blessing foundation are valid and honest depiction of how one builds a flourishing society. The postmodernists use Hegel's ideas to push for the creation of laws to undermine each of the principles that support the three blessings. So they've worked to redefine the social purpose of each of the three blessings. So what we have is fruitful, multiply, and take dominion. They have redefined them in the law now. So, or within policies. So we have in the first blessing, rather than competence, people being hired on competence, we have DEI, which is diversity, equity, inclusivity, which means that certain groups get a better hiring possibilities. And so compassion is preferred over competence. In transgender theory, the body is not seen to be essential, only the mind, and that violates mind and body unity, and that creates a break in social trust and rational thought, and that destroys the science departments of our nation. In the second blessing, they've redefined marriage to become, rather than multiply, it's focused on adult love, even though this leads to many groups of children getting harmed and neglected. And then the third blessing, of course, in Marxism, instead of me feeding my own family, my responsibility was to feed other families. And we're moving towards that, more and more, like in England, more taxation, where people have money have to be taxed more to feed other families who are failing to live up to the three blessings. And when it comes to caring for nature, it's the idea is that, for example, close down Western industries because they are polluting, but then the production moves to China, which is more polluting, but at least we're not doing it. So these kind of things to redefine the purpose of the three blessings. Always, every postmodernist law carries this thing, push legislation that benefits some groups, but always creates far more harm to other groups of citizens. So every piece of their framework carries this underlying thing. For example, transgenderism, to benefit 0.001% of the population, we're willing to harm the STEM fields of our nation and women and girls and children and all kinds of people. So this kind of thing. And because they want to bring society down, they work to undermine the internal workings of each of the three blessings. Whereas back in the 100 years ago, majority of people understood that sex outside of marriage was not helpful to society, but today we have a hypersexualized society. Or whereas gratitude and appreciation is really good for human beings and their mental health, they promote a resentment for past deeds, for example. So they undermine wherever they can the internal workings. From sexual restraint to freedom to whatever I want to do with my sexuality. And they refuse to look at the multiplication effect. So they say, look, we're helping this minority, we're good people, that's it, this minority is doing well, trans people, give them rights, etc. But they refuse to look, they don't look, they look at the existence of the law, the action of the law, but they don't look at the multiplication effect. But people do. Many people are sensible enough to see the damage, and they attack those people and call them nasty names. And so you end up with a culture war with all these issues, abortion issue in America and things like this. Whereas because some people see the damage and some people don't want to look at the damage. So this is what we talked about last week, okay? So this week we're going to be looking at other elements of this three blessings framework and how they're being attacked. So each of the three blessings is driven by love and beauty. Natural development occurs through the process of lineage improvement, family tree improvement. Are my children more capable of building a three blessings lifestyle than me? And we'll talk about natural rights, the freedom to fulfill my natural responsibilities within the three blessings framework. So we'll talk about rights, okay? If you have any questions or comments, how are you doing? Are we okay? Hello? Everybody okay?
Yes, fine, thanks. Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to move on. we've got here, so love and beauty, yeah, there's a section in this section of, so there's a section on love and beauty, which basically says God comes down to earth through the love and beauty dynamic. God gives his love in the hope of seeing beauty, basically. He wants to see beautiful children enjoying themselves, lovely families. He gives his love out of a motivate. He has power. He has all the power he wants. He has all the money he wants. But he's motivated to give of himself because he seeks beauty. So because we're children of God, the principle explains that each of the three blessings is driven. We get out of bed in the morning and go to work and do our things that develop us, and we build families because of the love and beauty dynamic. And God comes down, the blessings come down when we are motivated by these things. So, for example, I see beauty in learning. I'm really interested in learning. I read books. I see beauty in that learning process. And so I'm willing to give of myself to learn, and then I become more fruitful. Okay, I see beauty in football. I'm willing to go become a team player, develop my skills, get healthy. So I grow and develop because I see love, the beauty in the art of football. I see beauty in my family life. I want a good family, etc. I want to give of myself. I see beauty in creating a useful product for society, useful service. So I'm being useful with my life, and I give of myself. But we only see beauty because we have appreciation. When we lack appreciation, it's hard to see beauty. So appreciation is really a key. The principle explains how appreciation is part of love and beauty. Okay. So the vast majority of citizens, so that this love and beauty dynamic motivates us to build a constructive life, generates energy for personal growth. So on the left there. So the vast majority of citizens are not motivated by the desire for power or even get massively rich. Instead, most of us are motivated to give of ourselves as a means to find beauty. And beauty comes in different forms. So the principle kind of explains into where there's a section on love and all kinds of various other things. So most of us are willing to go to extreme length as a means to find joy, beauty itself. We might, pay a lot of money to go to the Seychelles. Truth, we might spend a lot of time, researching philosophy or studying. Goodness, we might spend a lot of time creating something good in our lives, in our home, painting, decorated, and to find meaning in our lives. So many of us will do something which makes us feel like, oh, my life is purposeful. And so this is the natural state of human beings because we are children of God, because God is driven by love and beauty. So as we search for these things, we generate the energy needed for personal growth. And our search for beauty is driven by the fact that we appreciate that there is beauty to be found. And when we get depressed as human beings or lethargic, it's because we can't see beauty. We go, the world's a mess. It's terrible. I'm not doing anything useful. My life is without purpose. And we get depressed because we can't see beauty. So it's fundamental to human existence, the love and beauty dynamic, and it drives the three blessings. And because it is so important to human welfare and development, the postmodernists understand this, and so they develop the specific, how one say, form of philosophy or form of thought called critical theory, in order to specifically undermine the love and beauty dynamic. So basically, the critical theory means criticize everything you can that is used to construct a healthy society. Look for all the negative points you can in anything as a means to undermine the motivation of people to live a fruitful life. So let's criticize the history, the oppressive nature of England, for example, rather than look at the democracy that Britain gave to these nations, which allows now them to live far higher standards of living than they could have ever done by themselves. Yeah. Men are toxic when men are out there working hard, building and constructing society in hundreds of ways, but men are toxic. Yeah. Marriage is the most meaningful thing for most people, many people's lives, but it's the oppression of women. Western businesses and having babies cause climate change. So let's not have babies and let's close down our businesses. Conservatism, basically valuing family and tradition and honorable lifestyle, is uncaring and far right wing. So basically, critical theory is to demotivate people from living life itself. Okay, so basically, the core postmodernists who drive the dialogue that drives all this public debate and everything are not interested in love and beauty. They are interested in power and money. They're motivated by the desire to gain large amounts of money or have power over society. So some gain power through creating social decay. For example, the socialists, the more people who can't function, who need state support, need public money, basically, therefore leading to a more socialist state, which was the purpose of the Soviet Union in the first place, to turn us into communist nations. Gain power by undermining the ability of people to live successful lives. Also, power is gained through being able to keep socially damaging laws in the law books through the use of fear and accusation. So keeping like transgender laws in the law box, even though everybody knows it's damaging, is power in itself. And being able to control the dialogue and cause social decay and keep them there is power. But basically what's happened over the last 30, 40, 50 years is that various cartels have formed and they control the narrative. There's so around each issue, whether it be the climate change issue or trans issue or abortion issue or redefining of marriage issue, you'll have a collective of different organizations who work together to create the narrative and keep it in place, and they all financially gain from it. So they gain from destroying society. So the departments of social sciences and gender studies and women's studies gain more students because their ideology creates more fractured families. The more fractured families, the more social workers you need, the more gender confused people you have, the more problems you have in society, and more so they make more money as they become more relevant to the social discussion. There's the industries. There's always an industry connected with one of these postmodern. Each of the postmodernist things. There's the abortion clinics, the IVF clinics, the surrogacy companies, the lawyers who benefit, the transitioning hospitals, big pharma who sell the hormones, the climate change cartel, which made up of a variety of different companies, but they all benefit financially from their narratives. Then you have the left-wing activists who promote the false stories in the media and hold it in place through fear, who will run after and chase after anybody who dares to question their narrative and get them to destroy their career. They get more state funding, the more laws that they get passed. And then the left of center politicians who receive large donations from the companies involved, and they pass the laws. And so they get the money, they pass the laws. So basically you end up with a cartel, and they hold this law in place through fear and go after, but they all make money from this destruction. And the rest of us kind of like are wondering how to fight this cartel like a mafia. How do you fight it? these different cartels and bring them down. It's a big problem. Okay, so that's that section on that was a section on love and beauty. Does it make sense? How are we doing here? Hi, section on
Yeah.
beauty. Any discussion?
So the concept of socialism
Yes.
is seen as a sort of soft underbelly of communism,
Mm-hmm.
and you often see extreme, um, like the communists. They will couch their language using socialist
Yes.
terms.
Yes.
So obviously they're not going to show their hand,
No.
and they will, as you say, use words like kindness and compassion
Yes.
to win people over. I guess
Yes.
the messaging is very
Deceptive.
deceptive. It's a bit like Lucifer.
That's right.
Yeah, very deceptive. However, they will point to like Scandinavian countries
Yes.
and say, "Oh, this is the model we want. This is a sort of this is where you have free markets and a sort of planned economy
Yes.
as one. You know, you have a good mix of two worlds,
Yes.
and you have a more equal redistribution of incomes."
Yes.
Um, I guess they always point to that as pink.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, Terry. Yeah.
so
How do you respond
how are you responding? Because
to
the
that?
economic Marxism of the last century
Yes.
has more or less gone now. Yeah,
Yes.
it's been debunked. Planned economic model is debunked. It just doesn't work.
Yes.
So
I mean,
now the new strategy is socialism and environmental activism and all
yes.
this woke
Yes.
messaging.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why Scandinavia has done so well is because if you understand the inner workings, as I talked about the inner workings of if you do any of the inner workings well, you will gain blessing. So the Scandinavians focus intensely on education.
Mm.
They really spend a lot of money on trying to make sure each of their children is a competent person that contributes to society. They really work on that. I live there, and this is very important to them. And everybody, all the teachers, have master degrees, etc. And they spend a lot of money, and that gives them an edge over other countries. So they produce high quality products rather than just cheap ones, and
Yeah.
that allows them. So the second thing is the internal quality of first blessing. They're very honest. They have incredible honesty, which generates tremendous amount of positive social energy. Because if you have dishonesty, you
Yeah.
waste a lot of money. They have a range of different qualities focused on which allow them to receive blessing. But because they've neglected the second blessing, and the third blessing, they have a good law. People, businesses are honest. They take care of the creation. They they have I don't want to say good laws, etc., etc., but they do have higher taxation.
Yeah.
So they benefited from sustaining themselves to a high degree of capability, various internal workings of the three blessings. However, they've neglected the second blessing over the last 30, 40 years, like the rest of the West. And now, like the rest of the West, they're going into big debt, big cuts in social spending. More and more kids are not joining life. They're living at home on benefits. They tried universal benefits for 1 year, found it doesn't work. Just people stay at home. and they're stuck with all these people who are not contributing, and more people aren't. In other words, they're a little bit later into the how one say the decay, but they're going that way. And it's the crime levels are going up, and all kinds of every statistic is going. In other words, they got there because they upheld certain inequalities to a high degree. But but in neglecting others, they will fall like everybody else. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So once you understand the internal workings, you can pick and choose and say, well, that country's doing well because they're doing well there and there, but they're failing over here. And you can start to see,
Right.
you can start to see it. Okay. Make sense?
Well, yes. I mean, there's more questions, but I won't delay
No.
your
Okay.
delivery.
Right. But does the love and beauty dynamic, does it make sense from a unificationist point of view, also from a social point of view? Would you say it generally makes sense?
Oh, undoubtedly, we're, love and beauty are very motivating factors,
Yes.
in seeing how the world is framed,
Mm.
and the, the reciprocation of love and beauty. It's all there. It's ingrained in most people.
Yes.
That's why they go to the countryside to look at beauty,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
or they admire fine buildings,
Mm.
the architecture,
Mm.
and these are things that
Yeah,
are,
and which is why left-wing architecture is so demoralizing. Yeah, and art.
yes, it's very ugly. Yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So it's deconstruction of beauty, deconstruction of truth, etc. Okay,
Yeah,
let's move on. Okay, as long as we got general agreement that this is, I'm trying to help people understand the three blessings says this, and the postmodernists are dismantling it. Okay, step by
yeah.
step. Okay. So the next that we move on, oh, go back. Okay. Okay. So the next thing is it's not specifically, it's within the ethos of the principle of creation, but Father himself in his own words talked about love, life, and lineage. So many times we hear things like within 3 generations the children will have grown to closer to perfection. This kind of concept that if we do well, then the children will be more able to live the three blessings lifestyle. And we see that in many unificationist children. We can see the quality of them is quite amazing, and they're quite wonderful people. So basically, the concept of how society goes forward is rather like is community development primarily occurs through the process of family tree improvement. Now, family tree improvement can happen in adults, but fundamentally it starts with the children, the quality of the children you produce. Are the next generation of citizens more capable of fulfilling the three blessings than the last? Do they have better core values, more able to build a loving family, better to look after their own economic needs, etc.? Now, all the social institutions have an interest in seeing this happen because all can play a part. Media can help each person develop. The schools can, businesses can help with apprenticeships, and religions can help, and everybody can play a part. And in general, that's why the West developed, because everybody was involved in general, all the institutions. And so the process of lineage improved. The reason why the West developed was because lineage development took place for such a long time. So basically, from the 1650s, where the marital norm became extremely strong, the Puritans and everything, and somehow that mellowed a bit, but it kept within the law and the mental framework that marriage was important. So most people married. Very few people had children outside of marriage, less than 5%. And basically, um, and humans and children went to school. As they did so, they become educated. So democracy could channel from pass from just the landowners to more and more groups of people, finally to women, and we because the development of the human being took place, and so power could divulge down. And so basically the concept of like an evolution, like what's the hope of a puffin, is that he wants his children to be a bit faster in flying or catch more fish, or this if the children are slightly better than the parents, and then the puffin community is the future of puffins are assured, and so this idea of the quality of the human being and will pass on out into the wider community. So it's to be noted, it's really important that the DP basically shares that. I'll put that. We're going to put that. It doesn't interfere. The DP shares that is the only form of family formation. It's the only form. Oh God. Could you mute yourself? Hi. Okay. Anyway, the marital family is the only form of family formation that provides a foundation for lineage improvement to consistently occur. So if we're talking about generating lineage improvement over the course of several generations, only the heterosexual marital family can generate those forces, which will allow that to happen. So it's the only form of family that can provide the energy that allows for the continued existence, sustenance of the good, and the foundation for future development of a nation. So children, why is this? Children raised by a single parent in a step-parent family, by a same-sex couple, by cohabiting parents, etc., on average, experience many more risks than children raised by their own biological parents. And these extra risks create a situation which, where there's a lot more potential for lineage decay to occur. Now, some people say, well, look, it's just two loving individuals, two adults, they're just as good as a heterosexual couple, whatever. So for example, two same-sex a couple were as capable as, well, we can do just as good. But the research doesn't show that. And the primary reason for that is because of the psychology of the child. Because the child is born with a natural desire to know the daily love of both biological parents. It wants to know, do the people who created me love me? They're born to wanting to know this picture of God, which is masculine and feminine, and male and female. And they want to know that God loves me, basically, that through my mother and father. And it is because they are born with this natural desire, and we cannot erase that natural desire. When the child doesn't get that picture, or doesn't get that picture of both parents who gave them life, love me, then they can struggle and have a psychological struggle, and they get what we call an attachment trauma. And many times they lose vitality for life. So children of divorce will give up trying to study, for example, won't want to build their own family, much likely to build their own family. They won't want to get involved, in the three blessings in any way, as much as the children raised by their biological parents. And there's all kinds of problems, increased psychological problems, increased behavioral problems, and increased rapes of each kind of form of non-traditional parenting creates its own extra risks. So cohabiting parents, or a single mother is visiting boyfriends, abusing the children, for example, or again, the same-sex couple, there's more sexual abuse and other problems there. So every step family, same problem. So It's the increased risks, and those risks mean that you get more and more groups of children who are living on the edge of society, struggling because they don't have the capacity to enter into the three blessings lifestyle, unable to marry, for build that family, sustain a family, build a career, etc. So we can see this, the marriage, and as the marriage rate in England, for example, has plummeted. But as marriage collapses, we see, the problems of lineage decay. More and more children grow up and end up without the discipline of a father. They end up in prison. We see this deaths by drugs in America. More and more people get involved in drugs, young drug communities, young males and things like that, and they get caught up in drugs. So this is death by drugs, which is quite shocking, keeps going up. Knife crime, in England, 1 in 15 children said they carried a knife last year as a means of self-protection. Unbelievable, 1 in 15. And you can see the red thing, knife crime going up every year. And that's just the crimes, and 2023 was 50,000. So more and more people frightened, more and more kids having a difficult time. And of course, to pay for all the damage, huge amounts of damage, drug users, people unable to work, social costs, welfare, extra police, extra social workers, you name it, extra doctors, hospitals, courts, you name it. It costs in England at least 50 to 60 billion a year, the breakdown of the family. And that just gets added onto the national debt every year because we can't afford it. So since the breakdown of the family, we see the national debt just going spiraling. We can't control it because the cost of paying for all the debt, all the problems, is just overwhelming the system. So you cannot survive without the marital family. Fundamentally, you can't create a sustainable, But the postmodernists, of course, will keep telling the believable lie that children are raised equally well in all forms of family. They just need love and stability. Is a sentence you'll hear on the news from the news presenters or people they invite on. If they get love and stability, no, there's a psychological demand of the child, which knows when it's separated from its biological parents and can negatively affect itself. And they will attack all those who reveal otherwise. So when there's a guy called Regnus in America, he did research on the same-sex couples and raising kids, and he revealed the extra risks in different forms that, and he got hounded. So researchers tend not to look at these things these days. Okay, so it's to be noted in general, if you're talking political overview, and what's the political goal, that the primary role of the state is to support the creation of a culture whereby lineage improvement can consistently occur. So the state should be really interested in, can the quality of our citizens be improved? It does this by supporting the three blessings framework, the internal workings of the three blessings framework. Can we improve the honesty of citizens, their ability to build families? How can we support them in difficult moments? How can we educate so that they're better, so that their careers can be, how can we catch the struggling children who don't have a father? How can we make an intervention there which will mean that later on we don't have massive costs? If you look at the data, for example, from New Zealand, they tracked children over a long period and tried to find out which ones cost the most in adulthood, and they found that like about 4% of children who had a really difficult, start in life in the first few years of life, most of them fatherless, ultimately cost the system. They were guzzling up about 50% of the different kinds of budgets available for and so it's really expensive to have children who are broken and fractured, and who grow up to be fractured adults. And so how do you catch those children? So all kinds of systems, how do you help that? It's not the role of the state to have compassion. It's not that, it shouldn't be its motivation on anything. Its motivation is how do we try to make sure that there's better outcomes in the next generation. It's up for individuals, religions, and charities to express compassion for struggling individuals. What happens if the state gets involved in the compassionate Olympics? I call it the Olympics because they bend over backwards to try to compete how compassionate they are. One of the things, politicians can overtax citizens, which is what's happening across a lot of the countries, a lot of West now, so as to spend money on the groups the politicians feel compassion for. The politicians are led through what they want to spend it on for. Leaving citizens little money to support those groups they wish to support, so that people might have a elderly mother or a relative who's not very well, or may care about the blind or whatever, and they have less money. So the charities now, since COVID, are really struggling because of the negative impact of the COVID, and so it's really hard. Politicians can be ideologically driven. So in other words, only some groups of people are important to be compassionate towards. So for example, we've had a strong narrative that the LGBT community is the most persecuted, the most suffering community, or racial minorities are struggling, etc. And in that narrative, they neglect the other larger groups of struggling citizens. So nobody talks about those who grew up without a father. Without a father. Oh, sorry, I'm back here. We don't talk about the people who struggle without a father. We don't talk about those who are sexually abused. We don't talk of, and it's a biased sense of compassion, which basically warps the whole of the social fabric and creates, unfair advantage for various groups versus others. And the reason that the core progressives do this is because they support the minorities, that if they support them will bring it, the laws will create harm for other groups of citizens and therefore bring about social decay. If they supported fatherless children, if they supported those who had been sexually abused, etc., all those, they would help society move forward and develop. So they have no interest. So you can see this over the last 40, 50 years. The socialists used to care about the poor, and now they don't care about the poor at all, because they do, it might bring about social development. They're much more interested in other groups who will advance their decaying agenda. And basically using other people's money to support groups you care about has nothing to do with being a virtuous human being. You're just virtue signaling to your political, peers that you're a good person, but actually you're just signaling you're not being virtuous at all. Okay. Okay, does that make sense? Are we there with lineage improvement? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right.
The lineage improvement idea sounds a good one.
Yes.
Concept that we want our children to be better than us,
Yes.
and our grandchildren to be better than our children, etc., etc. So it's a dynamic that's spreading out better outcomes for the world.
Mm.
Yeah, it's these are ideals And yes, we can map it back to what God's ideal is for us.
Mm.
Um, and the stark contrast with what we have under socialism, communism, or whatever
Yeah.
ism. So it's and people of a certain age will remember a time of our parents and our grandparents
Yes.
when this was like second nature.
Yes. Yes. I'm willing to sacrifice so my children have a better future.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's there's a very strong disconnect with
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah with that tradition. It
Yeah.
kind of yeah. Um, how how do young people how do they how do we bring them back to that traditional thinking?
Mm.
Yes, that is the question. For example, no, if you follow a bit the UK, there is, for example, Hope Not Hate charity run by Nick Wouts, who is actually financed. He gets finances from the government. So there are many charities who get finances who are promoting DEI, and they get a lot of money from the government, even to the point that they can influence in police decisions. For me, it seems an overwhelming task to bring something so rational in the foreground, you know.
Mm.
It's unbelievable. If you investigate a debate and look on you can directly find, you know, it's the same as for example, with immigration, yeah. I didn't think about it, but if you see why they don't stop the immigration the way they're doing, because there are a lot of people behind to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. 10 out of 10.
Why they spend 40 million pounds on DEI programs in the NHS when the NHS doesn't have money?
Yes.
Or 80 million, that the same is 80 million in the BBC. There's a lot of money for this type of charities and this kind. And if you see some of the debates, especially on GB News, where people are a bit more aware of the facts you mentioned, and you see some of these people, especially the ones who are involved in the DI programs, you know, you cannot talk to them. They're brainwashed.
Mm.
You see that over and over. So how logical you have a platform maybe like Jordan Peterson with the Daily Wire who says similar things, and he's maybe a powerful message, but he's still also attacked continuously from the left. So these people have a lot of power. For example, Nick Knowles, in the riots, he made a false tweet that there was a right-wing riot and there was a lot of police force there, and he's not even caught up for his false information, which cost the police a lot of money, because he gets funds, like you even said in the description, they get funds from the government for their programs, because the government cannot run all these diverse inclusive programs. It seems to me, in the moment, Britain, where we can hear a bit more outside, a bit of a nightmare. It must be in America too, but America not so much aware of it, you know, not 100%. But in Britain, it's in your face.
But I have another question to your lecture. You in these three blessings, you said nurture, protect child. Then, as a result, husband and wife is like caring for the children, like in the four position foundation.
Yeah.
But do you think could be there's also a little bit that there is more results than that, no? Then because if husband and wife unite, centered on God,
Yeah.
then they become a new object to God, basically, and also then, of course, the effect is that they take care of children if they have one,
Yeah.
if they have, and this goes like to like in the principles we anyway say to family, like tribes and society and nation. I mean, you mentioned it somehow, it has positive effects, but do you think this should be more like clearer, expanded, that how this has effects on society? And another question is, love and beauty definition, do you think would be needed? Or you think anyway everybody understand what you mean with love or true love or whatever?
Yes,
And like
it's a
through
good point. Yeah,
yeah, and you said also community development through lineage development.
yes,
It's a very churchy term, basically.
yeah. I mean, it's a problem in that in English we have very limited words. Yeah, you can talk about family tree improvement, which is a maybe more, down to earth.
Yeah, in German, this is very strange to
Very strange,
translate
yes, it's
this
very strange.
directly, basically.
It's not a term
Yeah,
you hear in
because
modern society. Yeah,
yeah,
the
then
concept itself is strange, but it's very strange that we don't have a term specifically for that because every other species has experienced and is still surviving 100 million years, has gone through some kind of process of development.
yeah,
And the
and
reason for sure human beings have developed
yeah,
a higher standard of,
yeah,
and we don't have a term in English to define that. So it's really weird. It's rather like we don't have a term in English to define like a healthy human being. We have a range of words like he's a wholesome human being, or he's a principled human being, or things like that. But we don't have any word which encapsulates the fruitful, what it means to be a fruitful human being, and a word we can use and say, oh, inside that there's honesty and compassion and nurturing and team player and you know what I mean. So
yeah.
English,
I
we just
mean,
don't have the words to define them. Either we invent them or we try to mix them together. But
yeah, and also one more or one other question in the negative effects. Do you think this could be also like that? Because I think Britain legalized also in Austria. It is also legalized that people are allowed to kill themselves with the help of
yes,
somebody. Yeah,
yeah, we haven't. I didn't bring that up. Yes, no, we haven't
yeah,
done that. It's going
yeah,
through Parliament right now.
yeah.
Yes,
And I mean, there are studies in Netherlands that this is already quite misused, no, for
yes.
inheritance. And my last point is, what do you think about this? Because some people in Britain, I watched some videos, they are really, how to say, going to public debates like Douglas Murray, the Kathy Hopkins. What do you think about this kind of people? Would be this a way how to go into public? Basically, of course, they are very, how to say, outspoken and very, very, how to say, not everybody can do this, I think. But do you think this would be a way how to influence society, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, what do? You've got to be a good speaker, and you not have to think quickly on your feet and all kinds of, and you have to know what you're saying and what's doing. The main problem with our social commentators like Douglas Murray, I mean, and others, he understands some aspects of woke. He understands some aspects of postmodernism, but he doesn't understand other aspects of it. So he himself supports gay marriage, yeah? So he's okay with that. But he doesn't see the social damage that comes from redefining the purpose of marriage and the negative effects on different groups of people. He doesn't see that, yeah? And that's the problem. On one side, you've got the woke who are totally united around, climate change, redefine marriage, transgender, abortion, etc. And they're totally united. And the other side, you have people who say, well, this one I don't like, and this one is okay with me. This one, and so you can't form a united front against this. And you can only form a united front once you understand the Hegelian structure of the attack, and you can then start to see where that Hegelian attack is applied. And then you can start to say, oh, this law, this law, this law, this law, they all do the same thing. They're all perpetrated in the same way, and they all have a negative effect on society if we look at the damage. So you've got to, so the problem is that like Jordan Peterson, he's getting more and more closer to it. But he you know, in the way he speaks, but he's been very sensitive in the last 5 years about which groups he goes after and which groups he doesn't. Yeah. And the way he formulates his words, like he doesn't say anything typically against abortion. He says, well, that's not the right way to frame it. It's, we have to talk about when sexuality is, you know, he talks about when sexuality.
But Steve, you can make a distinction there. Let us say, speak about, for example, Douglas Murray. Logically, he's gay himself. So logically, he supports gay marriage.
Who?
But, for example,
who?
He makes also the argument.
Douglas Murray.
Yeah, Douglas Murray. Yeah, he's gay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's gay. He supports it.
Yes. But there's a distinction. The same is with Darren Graves. Also, he is gay.
Yeah.
But what Darren Graves, I didn't hear that from Douglas Murray. That's what Darren Graves actually said. He gets upset with the transgender because they're coercing gay people that they're in the wrong body.
Yes.
So there's a distinction. You see, there are not a lot of conservatives are actually gay.
Yes.
So you can play with that a bit. You know, you can say, well, we're not supporting gay marriages, but you have to write on there. Martin Goodwin, I'm not sure if he's gay, is another one.
Yes.
He writes on Substack, and then there is also Culture Forum. Also in Culture Forum, there is a few who are counter reaction to all these kind of works. Logically, I don't know who in Culture Forum is gay or not. So there's gay and gay, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, yeah.
I mean, but of course, you know, he can see that, like Douglas Murray has certain things. He wrote a book on this immigration of Muslim culture into the West.
Yes.
He understands. He can see the damage. He can see the future damage. He can understand the multiplication effect. And he's very blatant about it. This will be the end of our cultures as we know it if we don't do something. He is against transgenderism and he's against DEI, and he understands that they have negative effects, and he's really clear. So you know, Jordan's the same. He has certain topics that he will consistently attack, but it's really hard to find somebody who is out there as big as they are, which will go after the whole lot.
Yes, because they would consider right wing.
Well, they would
consider extremely right wing.
It's much harder to make the case against gay marriage, for example, than it is to go against transgenderism, which is so evidently hurts people. It's much harder, much easier to go against like mass immigration than it is to go against abortion or something like this. So, and you've got to look at the data to see the damaging effects and what happens to, you know, for example, abortion destroys the ability of male and female to form, because it destroys the inner workings of marriage by killing the child. So you're bringing shame and you're bringing all this stuff and you lack of responsibility and all these things, and you're destroying the relationship ability of men and women to build constructive marriages, which is what happened in the black community, and you know, and it just, because they have so many abortions, it's just like the whole thing starts to fall to pieces based upon that alone, you might say. Yeah. So to understand the negative effects and to fight all of them is complicated. But if you understand the rule, does this law does it follow this format, which is we've talked about later in another lecture? Does it support a minority, and does that minority get the legal right to harm other groups of citizens? So in abortion, you get allowed to hurt the child. Okay. In transgenderism, you get to hurt the STEM fields and women. Yeah.
And children.
Huh?
And children.
Yeah, and children. Yeah. In climate change, you get, yes, we can destroy our industries and send it to China, yeah, and basically keep old people cold in England, as they say, whatever, because energy is so expensive. So, if you can show that this follows the same pattern, some people make a lot of money out of this narrative, and some people, but it always has a negative effect on other subgroups in the population who should be free to not be hurt in these ways. Yeah, they've made their money, they paid their taxes, and now they can't even pay for their energy. It does not fair. That's not how it works. So you've got to set up the system where you can sow the damage onto just various groups, and redefining marriage does the same. It seriously affects four specific groups of children, and brings down Christianity. We have seen the closing of Christian churches on a massive scale all across the West since the redefining of marriage. And because nobody wants to be seen to be a bigot. And so people are, and when you close down Christian churches, you close down the ability of young people to understand the three blessings. And therefore the three blessings disappears quickly from society. And so you end up with no cultural story whatsoever because so many churches are closing. And this seriously has a negative impact because children have less chance of getting good core values and a worldview that benefits them. So there's many negatives to redefining marriage, which is not mentioned at all in the common space these days. So yeah, what do you do with it? Yeah, and how do you as a movement, how do you learn to speak about these things with it in a way that doesn't upset people in a certain sense? Yeah. Jordan is very incredible with his words and his ability to speak and to somehow not upset too many people. But anyway,
he upsets a lot of people.
I think so. And I think we should not be worried to upset other people because it's their choice how to react, basically.
Yeah.
If we speak the truth as good as we know it, we should not be too much worried if somebody feels hurt or upset.
But our movement doesn't speak the truth in that sense.
Yeah.
Well, we try to be very
kind and diplomatic and not
very diplomatic. Yeah. I mean, it's difficult.
Can you see this series of points entering into some kind of lecture format that might turn into VOCM? Can you see us having something like this to go out to society and explain? What do you think, Terry?
Okay, so if we go back to divine principle,
yes.
Chapter 1 presents the ideal.
Yes.
Chapter 2 presents what went wrong, how it all collapsed.
Yeah.
And the chapter 3 and 4 onwards is the restoration process.
Yeah.
So in the same way you're talking about the three blessing framework or foundation, that's the ideal. That's what we should aspire to. And it's how you articulate that in ways that people can say, yeah, this is speaking to my original mind.
Yes.
This is drawing out something that doesn't have to be religious, so to speak, but it's something that actually appeals to my common sense of tradition. Yeah. So that's the key thing. You're presenting this ideal, the chapter 1, and then you have all that's going wrong with progressive postmodernism. The fall. You have this, and then we have this restoration process. Okay, how do we get rid of all this kind of conditioning we've had over decades about all these negative things about postmodernism that we have been brainwashed with, and how do we now clear our minds to get back to that three blessing foundation? What's the restoration process?
Yes.
So if you have that sort of that basic structure,
Mm.
you know, it's the same. If you watch a movie, you'll always the first third of the movie is presenting the ideal storyline. Then in the middle of the movie, it's all gone wrong.
Mm.
And then towards the end, you see them getting back to that
Maybe.
happy ending. Yeah. Okay. So that's the classic formula for drawing people's emotion. Yeah?
Yeah.
So having that thought, I think it's too busy. Your content is a bit too busy.
Yeah.
I think it needs, just to be. It's something. The essence is there. All those talking points are there about the postmodernism points.
Yeah.
I just want to see how we can how that could be simplified and shown.
Yeah.
You as you say, you keep the ideal up there at the top of each slide, the three blessing foundation, and then you're showing all this contradiction, all this thing that's going on wrong. I think that's fine. It's just yes, it's because one more point is you've got to leave. You can't overstate things.
Mm.
Leave it to people's imagination to see. Oh, this is not. Oh, yeah. Now this is true. This is not right. This is not right. This is not right. You're without stating it in black and white too much. So there's a subtlety of the message
Mm.
that also has to be thought about.